Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to our very first broadcast of 2021. This is, let's get some things going here. Greetings, everyone. This is our first broadcast of 2021, and welcome to the political consciousness of West Coast Steeler fan. This year, we're kind of changing our theme a little bit, and we're going to call this To an Imperfect Union. My original theme was to another imperfect union. Because if we go back and study our history, we find that we have compromised throughout American history. And that has led to some very imperfect unions. It's been written about in history. You can go back and I believe there's a couple novels, a couple nonfiction uh, books entitled To an Imperfect Union. And most of them have to do with American treaties and things that we have done to other people. Uh, Treaties with the Indians, treaties with uh, various uh, foreign nations. Um, I guess most recent would come to mind the Cold War was a form of an imperfect union. Here, if you want to go to our history, I would say probably uh, after the Nixon administration. Perhaps if you want to go back to it, if you want to look at it from a veteran's perspective, probably even after the Vietnamese War. Um, so our country has made a history of making imperfect unions, and they usually lead to some type of social progress. Now, whether or not this is going to be the case in our future, it kind of remains to be seen. We have an election in Georgia that we're definitely going to talk about tonight during the crux of the show. We also have a former president and some of his colleagues that do not want to accept the results of this election. Now, one of the questions that I have raised before, excuse me, I'm going to turn this to MSNBC. Um, One of the things that I've said before is what is going to be the general effect of these 75 million voters that voted for Trump and his policies. Is there any reconciliation? Can we meet in the middle? Can we form an imperfect union? Well, it seems that we're going to get the answers, or we already had the answers, depending upon which side of the line you want to cross. We have approximately 108 members of the House. That don't want a union, they want an election overturned. We have 11 senators, including Ted Cruz and some others that are willing to put the premise of a free election on trial once again in order to make a point. And I say in order to make a point because the election is over, the votes have been counted, and we have a new president of the United States. Now, believe me, when we woke up in 2016 and Donald Trump was elected, I was one of the first to scream bloody murder. My Lord, what has happened? Has our election process been hijacked? Has it been tampered with? How could the man that lost the general election by over 3 million votes possibly be the president of the United States? And yet, here, the Electoral College overwhelmingly voted this man into power. Strangely enough, coincidence, karma, whatever you want to call it, we have the same election results now, but with a different winner. Now you have lost an election by 7 million votes. You've overwhelmingly lost the Electoral College. But now the vote is a fraud. How many times did you tell liberals, if you don't like the results of the vote, leave? Hmm. But now you are, as a matter of fact, now you want to declare the whole election null and void because you didn't get the results that you desired. Now, I don't even want to bring race into question right now because as of today, we saw a Georgia Republican manager of elections once again go over each point of contention about the Georgia resolution, results, point by point, and explain exactly what has happened in Georgia. You have a Republican Georgia Secretary of State that has continuously told us that there is no fraud, no widespread dumping of votes, anything illegal in the state of Georgia. I think it one of the uh, uh, talking points he may have said that there were 2 cases found. In other instances, he went over painstakingly and told us exactly why these things could not happen. So, getting still, we have uh, excuse me, just kind of keep me up with more of the Trump dribble that is coming our way. As I was saying, how's that, Larry? Can you hear me now? Okay. As I was saying, it seems that now Mr. Trump has decided that all of these elections are illegal. Well, if the elections are illegal, what about all of the new Republican members of the House that we have? Does that make their elections also illegal? Speaking of things being illegal, is it illegal for the President of the United States to ask Georgia representatives, Georgia election officials, to find a significant number of votes, not just 1 or 2, but specifically 11,750 votes? The significant number of that number, the significance of that number is because 45 lost the Georgia election by 11,700 and excuse me, 779 votes. So he needs 11,780. Now, let's say, for instance, this were any other president, especially a Democrat. If he had called a state official and asked him to change the results of the election in his state, do you think that there would have been impeachment proceedings, even though he was this close to being out of office? Now, since he's recorded uh, and I might be stretching it here, but he's being recorded on telephone. When we had gangsters that were making plans using the telephone, there were federal laws that were violated. I'm sure that once this president is out of office, there may be some state repercussions. But as the people and as the senators and the House represent us, should we not call for this man to resign? Out of all of the corrupt things that he has done during his administration, do we give him a pass because he has 16 days left in office? Do you give a criminal a pass because the statute of limitation runs out in 3 weeks? No, we don't do that. That's not how things work in our America. If you want to point to corruption, look at what, excuse me, I'm getting a little carried away. Look at whom this man is pardoned. These are not people that have made a mistake in life and deserve a second chance. These are people that are loyal to him. This man is pardoned as a veteran. It was appalling enough for him to pardon the Navy SEAL. It was appalling enough for the way that he treated John Venderman. Has he sunken to a new level by A, pardoning, and I'll put it bluntly here, baby killers, privatized warriors that had nothing to do with serving their country? These people were in the war for profit. You pardon a general that has admitted publicly that he lied. And then you decide that our soldiers do not need a pay raise because you have a problem with social media. You decide that because of your base, you do not have to sign acts that are important for veterans because you do not want to change the name of some of our institutions. But yet, these are institutions that you refuse to defend. Remember, you had bone spurs. And let's talk about how we have actually how we have really screwed the pooch when it comes to what we are doing about COVID-19. We have a vaccine, and it was promised that once this vaccine was developed, this vaccine would be distributed with all due haste. Now we find that we have vaccines sitting in refrigerators that is not being used. We want to cut the vaccines in half so we can distribute them properly. Is this typical military thinking? You have a bottleneck. So instead of easing the pressure at the bottleneck, let's increase it. Let's cut the amount of doses in half so we can have twice as many people trying to get through this little bottleneck and get vaccinated. Now tell me what kind of sense does this make? We have a 9/11 crisis every day. Right now, I believe the current death toll is a little over 1,100 or something for today. Our total has our total for this since we have started counting deaths for this for this virus is right now at 353,000 plus United States citizens dying of COVID-19. The great hoax, the hoax that after 15 deaths, this was supposed to disappear. Not only has it not disappeared, but we have found more virulent strains, not necessarily as far as we know, the lethality of this new virus might not be as high, but the infection rates are very high. So therefore, dealing with this virus has become very problematic. Out here in California, you have a rise in cases. You still have rises in cases in California. I mean, California, Florida, and Texas. And right now, no one is presenting us with a viable solution as to what's going on and as to how we can alleviate this problem. Joe Biden has said that within the first 100 days, this is his plan. But if he doesn't have the cooperation of the outgoing administration, this sets the transition back X number of days. Yes, I agree. It's better to get the vaccine into anybody's arm than let it go to spoil on the shelf. But as things have typically ran with this administration, it's hard to get things done when uh, uh, the usual rant, this is not the first president that we've seen it, but when you're spending your last days out on the golf course rather than taking care of business, it's very difficult to make a transition. And not only that, you know, thinking about the transition team and what's supposed to be happening, rather than trying to make a transition, we're more concentrating on how the election was stolen. I remember Donald Trump riding down that elevator with glee in 2016, uh, speaking on how the American people have spoken, and how he was elected by uh, an overwhelming majority, even though he had lost by 3 million votes. Now you've lost by 7 million votes, and you still want to claim credit. Unfortunately, I think a lot of our younger generation are going to be more impacted by what's happening than we really have come to realize. And I say that because young people seek approval. And regardless of what side of the line they may want to vote on or they may fall into, when you show or when you demonstrate to them that they have no hope, that their vote is being secretly diverted into things that they don't want, then uh, you have to realize that there's a certain amount of hopelessness involved here. I see our first guest is here in the podcast, uh, Miss Melissa Smith. Melissa, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I guess I should say glad to meet you since
Yeah,
this
I know. I
is.
was thinking, wow, video, this is awesome. I'd have dressed.
well, well, thank you so much for coming on the program. We're trying to come here into the 21st century.
Awesome.
K9 and I have also decided that our show is going to be on YouTube. So we are doing our boxing as well as our political things now here on live stream. So
That's
welcome to
awesome.
the show.
Thank you so much.
uh, let's kind of jump right off into it here. One of the things that I was talking about was the vaccine problem.
Mm.
It's it seems now we have a vaccine, but I'm also looking at the death rate per day. Uh, as of today, we crossed the 353,000 mark as far as deaths. Um, Out here in California, we are experiencing a new outbreak. We have two new strains now. In the UK, they've even introduced a third vaccine that is even cheaper and much easier to keep, the AstraZeneca.
Mhm.
Uh, so, New York is another place where you're having another surge, just as we are. And I don't understand why people can't associate uh, hubs, airplane hubs, and this disease. I mean, it's kind of, people come in and out of your country, people come through airports, but I guess, maybe that's too much of advanced calculus for my mind or whatever. I'm not sure. So, what is your thoughts on this vaccine? The bottlenecks. Uh, do you think that this is all? Uh, well, you also work in government, so tell me what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, the fact that there's a vaccine at all is an extraordinary testament to the the science and to the dedication of researchers and medical doctors and biologists who have done just extraordinary work to even put a vaccination in place. The two first ones, the Moderna and uh, the
Pfizer.
Pfizer, are RNA based. They're not based on live virus. And as I said, it's extraordinary science. They have a very, very high rate of effectiveness in cases in all of their tests so far. And that's not to say that it's been out there long enough to really understand all the complexities, but it's good enough. And given the fact that there are over 83 million people in the world that have been diagnosed with COVID. And in America, we are well past 20 million. And as you say, in California, you're in the midst of a horrific rise in cases that has Los Angeles in that area of Southern California, literally with not a hospital bed to be found. Uh, I find it absolutely unconscionable that state, local, and federal government agencies have not prepared for this moment. We have known for months and months and months that a vaccine would be required and that it was under development, and we have had all of this time to plan how to distribute a vaccination. And the fact that we see images of senior citizens, of men and women in their 70s and 80s, camped outside in frigging parking lots in Florida so they can get first come shots in their arms is an outrage. So that's that's number one. Secondly, there is absolutely no consistent messaging on why people need this vaccine, how we are going to advance the process of getting people vaccinated, and putting that into play, and grabbing every sports figure, every public figure you can think of to say, "Hey, I'm getting a shot in my arm. This is to save my life." But before we even do a vaccine, the best thing you can do to save your life is wear a friggin' mask. And we're not even doing that. You have people in Los Angeles running around malls going, "I don't need to wear a mask." There's over 2 million cases of COVID in California now. It's crazy. My brother tells a story. He lives in upstate New York, where parenthetically, the fourth US case of this B117 variant of COVID has been found, which is highly contagious, much more contagious than the older form of the disease. It was found in his county. His county already sends health alerts that says, "Hey, we're out of beds." So if he needs to go to the hospital, he has to travel over 150 miles to get a hospital bed. My brother has pre-existing conditions that make him susceptible to COVID. He literally goes out in a hazmat suit or something, very approximate of a hazmat suit just to go to the grocery store. So he goes today to the grocery store in a county without enough beds, no beds. And people are walking around the supermarket without masks. I just don't understand. So the fact that people feel that their personal lives are so terribly threatened by wearing a mask, as if this is the worst thing that has ever happened to them in their entire life, that they have been asked to walk outside with a mask on to save others and themselves, if nothing else, to save themselves from infection. The fact that they can't even do that is no wonder that the vaccine deployment is such a debacle in the United States. And it's criminal, and it will kill more people.
But let me ask another question here, because a lot of those senators and congressional people and that we saw that refused to wear masks somehow managed to get themselves in a line to get vaccine.
Yeah, I know. Me first.
And also, when you see sports figures and uh, people of means being able to get this vaccine, and then you hear about bottlenecks. Does it seem that once again, even though we say that it shouldn't happen, that if you have means in this country, you also have a better chance of being able to be vaccinated, even though it's supposed to be according to, as you say, pre-existing conditions. I know people at the VA hospital that I go to out here in La Jolla. Most of them got their shot sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas, which would mean that most of them are starting to get their second doses right about now. But we haven't heard anything about veterans, people of my age, 73 and older, with pre-existing conditions, kidney conditions, heart conditions, some, exacerbated by Agent Orange and different things like that. But we still haven't had any notification. And we've found new cases of the new strain also here in San Diego. So, what type of example do you think our present government is setting when you see these things happening every day on our screen in our social and news media?
Well, to me, it's malfeasance and incompetence combined. The fact that there is not a concerted effort to put a shot in the arm of every single healthcare worker in America is beyond belief to me. The fact that we're not prioritizing the people who deliver our groceries over some rich person in their own little personal castle is beyond me. I don't understand it. And, it just furthers the failure of the current administration. And, you know, uh, it's not that I think that Joe Biden is, the savior of the universe, but he has competent people who will be able to make this work. It's just, unfortunately, we have another 16 days till his inauguration, and it's not like, oh, January 20th, suddenly you wave a wand and everything works. This is not simple stuff. I'll tell you a story though. In New York City, I recently read this. In New York City in 1947, a
Year of my
man,
birth.
19, yes, my husband too. So happy birthday. Um, my a man took a bus from Mexico to New York City. By the time he got off the bus, he was deathly ill with smallpox. And, he had been on this bus. And so there were people who were exposed on the bus and people who were exposed in the hospital he went to and so on. Once they figured out what it was, he was isolated. And the New York City went into an absolute panic mode to say, oh my God, we've got active smallpox. And, this is 2 years after the end of World War II. And there was really no clear understanding of who was and was not vaccinated against smallpox because it's not a disease that was active in America in 1947 because prior vaccination efforts had been fairly successful. So in New York City, the mayor and most importantly, the commissioner for health came up with a campaign and a strategy to inoculate as many people as possible in New York City. And within 23 days of that man's diagnosis in a New York City hospital, 6 million shots had been administered across the city. They literally did it everywhere. They did it in stadiums, they did it in hospitals, they did it in clinics, they did it in schools. And they were able to inoculate 6 million people to prevent a serious, devastating outbreak of smallpox. As it happened, 11, 12 people had gotten the disease. That's it. They stopped it dead in 1947. So fast forward, here we are in 2020. Due to in my opinion, the criminal malfeasance of the American federal government and their enablers across the states, this pandemic has been allowed to rage out of control to 20 million people. And as you said at the beginning of the show, 353,000 people dead that we know of, because I'm sure there are more who have perished who we haven't had the diagnosis of COVID for. Okay. And yes, there are limitations at this moment in time to the number of vaccines that are available to deploy. But again, if we had bloody planned it to say, we know there's going to be issues because we're just first developing this from a manufacturing standpoint. We know that there are special conditions that are required to store the vaccine, to mix it properly so that you can give as many doses as possible, to ensure that you have a vaccine in a person's arm on day 1 and 21 days later they are back for their second shot. All of those things, it's just called project planning. You do it. And if we had started that process, we would not be in this mess because government can do it. It has been done. So what do? You say, okay, we know we have N number of vaccines that we can deploy, and you make it available. You take it to the people. I mean, I, again, this issue of logistics. A lot of America is rural, and because of an entire generation of like the sort of reduction in healthcare services in America, really since the Reagan years, where hospitals have closed. We have no healthcare infrastructure in rural America left. So how are we going to put those shots in those arms? We're going to have to take it to them. We're going to have to build buses. We're going to have medical personnel that are going to take it on the road and go down all those blue line highways and then vaccinate people step by step by step by step by step. Because the truth is, we have to have a 90% saturation in this country of vaccinations to really be effective and stop this disease. And we know now that we have a variant that has come from UK that is much more contagious, doesn't cause more disease, but if you have that many more people being able to become sick, that's going to have much more effect on the healthcare system, because it's just, you're going to have more people ill. So you're going to have, so what's happening in Los Angeles today, what's happening in Saratoga County in upstate New York, where you have no beds left, is going to be the entire country. And then what? That means if you know, you have a heart attack, or in LA today, you may not get care. You may die because you're not going to get to the hospital because those ambulances have COVID patients. So that's the importance of a vaccination, and that is the importance of figuring out that process of how to develop the materials that you need to ensure that you can manufacture it, how you develop the logistics to distribute it, how you develop the logistics, and not only to distribute it one time into everybody's arms, but twice. How do you ensure all of that? It's just called project planning. I mean, where is the military? We're the best military in the world. Where are they? They know how to do this. Where are the tools that a government can use to take this kind of action? And that is what has to happen if we are to defeat this pandemic. It's the only way. Otherwise, we will all be sick. And the death of 363 or 353,000 will seem like something we pray for, because we'll be in the millions. And that's not hyperbole. That's reality. That's how disease quickens. That's why we are now getting 1 million new cases a week. That's how California took how many months to get to 1 million, and then a month to get to 2, and then from 2 it'll be 4, and so on. So that it has to be the focus. It has to be the primary focus, or one of the many primary focuses that the Biden administration is going to have to come in with, and they're going to have to marshal all of government, all of the federal government, and then partner with state and local government in order to ensure that these vaccinations get to the people that need them as soon as possible.
Let's talk about our second pandemic before time runs out on us, and that's this economic pandemic. We're so caught up in our medical issues here that it seems that I won't say it's been lost, but it has certainly become secondary. Um, do you want to take me down, why it's okay to put a $600 band-aid on our unemployment, or why we don't, as I like to say, why we don't deserve $2,000 of our money?
We deserve $2,000 a month. That's what other countries are doing. What is it, Australia? I mean, uh, we have how many people unemployed?
Have we forgotten that this is our money?
This is our money. Hello, taxes. I know it's kind of funny. People seem to think it's the government, whoever the government is. We are the government. I mean, this is a republic, and we elect our representatives to represent us. But it doesn't seem like there's certainly a good percentage of them are not in the interests of the American people. That's for sure. And this pandemic has really has revealed. Well, it's literally through illness and death revealed who we really are, and it's a lot of failure. I mean, there's brilliance in terms of the medical community and what they do to keep us alive, but there's also a lot that has been revealed that is pretty terrible, and we need to move forward with that. And one of it is that we are allowing our brothers and sisters around us to literally starve to death. They people literally are hungry because they have no money and therefore they cannot buy food, or they have to choose between a home and food. And they figure, well, home probably, I really need a home. So I'll wait online for hours to get food because I need a home. So that's where we are in this country. The basic needs of, food, clothing, shelter. People are figuring out, I really want to keep the shelter. So,
Everybody doesn't live in California.
no, and it's cold here, it's cold in New York, and people, are living in a situation where they cannot pay their rent, and we have on a state level, we have laws that keep kind of extending the opportunities to avoid eviction from apartments, but at some point, somebody's got to get paid. The landlord needs his money, or the mortgage company needs their mortgage money, or they're going to repossess your house. And then what are you going to do? You have no home, you have no equity, you have nothing. So people are opting to do what they can to keep whatever roof they have over their head, but they have no food. So people have to go to food banks to get food. I mean, there's one local bank near me in Brooklyn. They used to serve 400 people a week. Now it's 400 a day, 500 a day. Uh, This is the richest country on earth. Hello? And we begrudge people $600 fucking. Sorry, oops. $600?
You're good.
Yeah, oh wow, $600. That's
You can speak French here. You're
yeah, I
good.
mean, what the hell is that gonna get you? Okay, cool, yeah, I know you're gonna go buy crack with your $600. Gonna go buy Johnny Walker Black, oh boy. I mean, so you figure a family of 4, and you have 2 teenage boys in that family, $600 doesn't buy you food for a week. You know what I'm saying? I so
and, and thank God they're not in school. I mean,
oh,
so,
oh, oh, it's so I mean, look, this is I've been telling this story, my grandmother, when she was the last time we had a pandemic was at the end of World War One, 1918, 1919. And my grandmother was 5 years old in 1918, and she told this story literally all her life, how towards the end of 1918, her beloved aunt who was raising her, because her mother had passed, um, had gotten the flu and was in the hospital and almost died. That so traumatized my grandmother as a 5-year-old girl that she told that story her entire life, how she had lived through the pandemic of 1918 and her aunt had almost died. And she told that story forever, through her entire life, till the end of her life. If I would see her, I would hear that at least once every time I met her. I would hear the story of how Auntie survived the flu. And can you imagine what our kids are going to go through? Our children, our grandchildren, our nieces and nephews, our cousins who are being shut out from their entire communities, from their schools, from everything for well over a year. This is coming into a year in March. And because of the abject failures of our current government, it's going to be what? S- Late spring, early summer before we start to get to a point where maybe kids can congregate again. And that's praying that we stay ahead of the pandemic with the vaccines we have. So, yeah, it's terrible. I mean, in New York City, even when schools are closed, the buildings are open so people can come to get food for their children to have breakfast and lunch. Every child, any New Yorker can get 2 meals a day at a local school every day, even if the school is closed for education. Schools are open to serve food because people are hungry. So, to get back to the original question about the economics of this, it's devastating. Never mind, you walk down a city block and how many businesses are out of business because that first stimulus went to rich people's businesses and cronies and friends, didn't go to corner stores. And those corner stores, which hugely are always on the margin to real estate interests and other things, they are being devastated. And that means all those people that are then going to be unemployed. So you may look at a little mom and pop store and say, oh, it's a mom and pop store, but it employs 5 or 6 people. That means 5 or 6 people that can put food on the tables for their families, that can pay their rent or their mortgages, that have a home, that have food, that have clothing, that have shelter. And now we have completely destroyed that through our ineptitude. So you're damn right we should be giving people money until we figure this out. And we're at the point where we need an FDR style work, like WPA kind of stuff, where you just have workers program and you just pay people to work, pay people to build infrastructure, pay people for arts, pay people for everything. Just employ them until we will rebuild our nation economically.
Did you just advocate socialism?
No, I advocated. I advocated putting people to work by using whatever means necessary, by giving loans to businesses, seed money that you write off and you don't need it back, um, by re-education, by looking at areas that are totally let's look at the arts. I mean, there hasn't been a Broadway play in a year. That's a lot of people that don't work anymore. And all the other little, off Broadway, all those little venues are done. So what do
Yes.
we do? They're not coming back. How do they come back? You gotta That was one of the things the WPA did. I mean, they did brilliant. They put writers to work. They put artists to work till they could get on their feet again. And it's kind of what we're going to have to do. I don't see any other way around it. But yes, I'm advocating for the S word. It's not a bad word. Doesn't mean you're in, Stalinist Russia. It just means people have dignity of work and the opportunity to grow and develop themselves and their communities and to rebuild those communities with dignity. That's what that means.
Well, as always, Melissa, it's very good talking with you. First time seeing you face to face, as I said.
Yeah, no,
But
so great.
so let's get your final thoughts. We have a big election coming up tomorrow in the state of Georgia. We have the Trump Nation calling for Proud Boy rallies January 6th. Uh, your final thoughts on what what we should be looking forward to in the next 16 days?
My final thoughts is that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will be inaugurated on January 20th, 2021, beginning at noon, and we will have, be able to proudly look upon Kamala Harris as our woman, first woman of color who will be a vice president in this nation of ours. And to me, it's something that should give hope to all of us that despite attempts to really just destroy our republic, we will move forward. And these things can and shall happen. And the best parts of 2020, as horrific a year as that was, which is the coming together of people to speak truth to power. The Black Lives Matter movement will continue and will have effects that will be long range and far reaching. And I really believe that if I didn't, I don't know what I would do. And I have to say, I've had tremendous despair this year where I've even thought, why am I even in America anymore? It doesn't want me. But we all have to overcome that and realize that we owe it to everyone around us uh, to keep fighting for what's right. And I think that opportunity will face us in 16 days. And I was just very gratified to know that the head of the Proud Boys was arrested today in Washington, D.C. So let him rot in jail. And good luck to all of those idiots. And
Yeah,
hopefully they'll crawl back wherever they came from.
they had a handbook telling people how to smuggle weapons into the District of Columbia, even though that's not an open carry state. But you know, if you're having those frustrations, can you? I would imagine that they're felt even more, 10 times more within the Black community.
Yes.
Uh, we. Um, I'm not sure what's going to happen for the duration of 2021. I'm hoping that there's a peaceful transition, but I'm also of a wait and see attitude because not only do we have 74 million people that supported Trump, we also have 110 legislators that are supporting him, including 11 senators. Um, and, I'm wondering about the long term effects on our sense of democracy.
Well, I agree with you. I find it absolutely an outrage, and it's against everything I would have ever thought would happen in this country. Um, and I really don't know. I mean, I'm trying to be optimistic, but I'll be honest to say, I mean, I'm old enough to and don't have the kind of responsibilities that other people have anymore. So I can just leave. And have thought about it. And I'm serious. I never thought about it before. But this summer I did. I thought about the fact that we've fallen. You know, well, let me put it this way: for the first time in my life, I understand what happened in Germany in the early years of the Reich, and that is something I never thought I would understand. But I do see what that is, and it's 1/3 of the country hates the other third, and the third just does nothing. So there you go. And this is a lot of what's happening here. So I uh, I have a skin color that can help me pass, so that I'm not walking around being attacked and called terrible things and being followed in a store and all of those kinds of daily nightmares that people of color experience. But I also know that I'm not what these people are, and so they hate me too, and they want to see me dead. And to me, that's fighting words. And I'm a boxer, so I'm ready to take to the streets too. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. Like, go out fighting.
Like they say, a coward dies 1,000 deaths. So I'm definitely with you.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for
Thank you.
Melissa. I look forward to having you back on the show. And
Thank you
as
so much.
always, I appreciate your time.
Okay. Take care. Good night. So great to
Good
see you, JK. Bye bye. Happy New Year.
night. Same to you, Melissa. Yeah, and same to
Okay.
you. Bye.
Right. Bye bye.
That was Miss Melissa Smith. Always glad to add her and have her opinions voiced online. Good evening, Mike. How are you doing?
Hey, James. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I saw you listening in on a little bit of our conversation there, so
Yeah.
I'll kind of get into it, right into it. You, the distribution. Now we're hearing about the bottlenecks. We're hearing, maybe we should give only half of a serum, uh, which doesn't make sense to me because if you're only giving half, then it seems like you're going to be dealing with twice the number of cases. Uh, Today, we went over the 353,000 death mark. Seems every day we have at least the number that we had from 9/11. Uh,
Yeah.
they are now we now have three vaccines available. Of course, the AstraZeneca is available in the UK. We also have a new strain coming out of the UK, Australia, and a couple other places. What is your view on what's happening with uh, the distribution side of this? Do you see a way that uh, to kind of take the pressure off this bottleneck, other than using half doses? Which I mean, we've we all have already created a sense of uh, mistrust in some
Mhm.
communities because of how quick this vaccine was developed. Up until now, it took generations almost to develop vaccines. Now we have one, in less than a year. And people are kind of leery of that, especially minorities. Uh,
Yeah.
what do you think about the job that this administration has done? And without giving the Biden administration uh, the correct numbers, or at least a realistic idea of what's happening, as far as the distribution, because up until 2 days ago, things are, the vaccine is out there. Let's get it in people's arms. Uh, what's your thought about how this whole thing has kind of uh, turned into for any other lack of a word, a shit show?
Good old fashioned shit show. You're right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you mentioned a lot of really important things. My general thought is, wow, what a logistical nightmare. I don't know if you've ever tried to organize a little league picnic, but getting vaccines in the arms of every American is just, it's insane. And I'm glad I'm not in charge of it because that's not my strong suit. But I am also caught off guard and surprised by the idea of halving the dosage. So my bachelor's is in biology and I studied at UCSD, so I have a little bit of understanding of vaccination and immunology, and that second dose really boosts the efficacy of the first dose. So I don't know, my opinion on that part of it is almost irrelevant because the science I think should speak. If you still have high efficacy with one dose, and there's still an opportunity to give a second dose, then gosh, I leave that to the folks who are trying to solve that puzzle. I do think it's weird. I do think it erodes further, the confidence in believing that they know what they're doing. It's almost like a frat house, and they're out of beer, and they're like, "Hey, well, let's just dilute it. Let's pour some water in it, and we'll make it work." It just seems like a very it just doesn't bode confidence. And the challenging thing is that the Trump administration, I think, is notorious for basically not coordinating or orchestrating national responses. There's always a deferment to the state under this sort of idea of states' rights and independence, and that's certainly true. But gosh, starting from when we had no N95 masks and we didn't have ventilators, rather than collectively bargaining as a nation and distributing to the states, he let every state bid against itself, and the prices went up, and people got less for what they. He gave away the collective bargaining power. It seems to me like there should be a stronger federal component that extends into the distribution of the vaccine, even if that includes things like making federal sites available for vaccine stations. We're letting states struggle independently, and now I hear in some states they're saying they're going to start fining hospitals if they don't get rid of the vaccine fast enough. And that's one approach, but it also makes me think it's not likely that any hospital is sitting on a pile of vaccines saying, we'll get around to it later. They're probably working as hard as they can. And so I don't know, it's a mess, James, but I think a lack of coordinated federal response on this part of it is going to manifest in the ways that it has in the past. And that's a disappointment. The other question, you kind of touched on is, will the vaccine, with the new strain, will it even be effective? And if so, will it have the same level of effectiveness? And there's just a lot of questions still that are to be answered. And meanwhile, as you mentioned, 353,000 deaths per day. I have to admit, and this is a natural, I think, a human thing, but that number hardly means anything to me anymore. 353,000 total, and rising daily. That it's so hard to even conceive of, and I think a lot of people are just tired and giving up. And like I said last time you had me on the podcast, I just don't think we've learned our lesson as a nation yet. And unfortunately, as painful as it is, I fear that it's going to continue to get worse.
I'll ask you the same question that I asked my last guest. When you see, people that told you 5, 6 months ago, that masks were an infringement upon your liberty,
Right.
that we didn't need to use masks. And that this virus would go away rather quickly.
Yeah.
But, but we talk about a bottleneck and distribution among the masses. But since this vaccine has been developed, we have seen every member of Congress get their shots that wanted them. We've
Right.
seen, sports figures, talk about, how they've had, access to vaccines after they've tested positive for COVID-19. So Once again, are we seeing that even though it's supposed to be based upon your ability to catch the virus, the vaccines once again seem to be upon your station. If you have enough money, if you have enough status, you know, here, let's give this to the highest paid sports player, and this will demonstrate to every American that the vaccine is safe.
Right.
Do we have our values ass backwards here? I mean,
Yeah, I think we do. I mean, I know a lot of people will just make the economic argument that that's such big business and it's such a part of American culture that, that it's almost like an essential. I don't feel that way. I'm not a sports fanatic, and so I
I
do
mean,
see that
I am.
inequality. Yeah,
I am. So I mean, it's part of my business. I mean, so
yeah,
I have to be concerned, but yet and still, I'm thinking of people, that are my age and older that have pre-existing conditions. Perhaps your grandmother, grandfather. Does it make sense for Mitch McConnell to have his arm sticking out when? First of all, uh, maybe according to him, you're one of those that you know, hey, if you catch the virus, so be it. I mean, it just seems very
yeah.
hypocritical here. We have a
It does.
vaccine. I need it. But as for you, hey, I don't even care whether you have food on your table or not. But we'll get into
Right.
that later.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the argument, I guess, is continuity of government, right? And even if they're a-holes and we don't agree with what they say and how they say it, the country will be weaker if we have a disruption at that level. So as much as I'd like to see that fella fade away sooner than later, and I wouldn't mind if it was painful and uncomfortable, to me, that the government piece is a little bit different, and it does sting, obviously, because there are people that have been very, very unhelpful and even disruptive and destructive, who are going to benefit from this. But gosh, the sports one rubs me certainly more the wrong way, because it's there are people that are dying, and it goes back to the testing too, James. Like that there have been claims. They've faded now, but if you remember, there was a good 3, 4, 5 months where Trump wouldn't shut up about testing and how great our testing was, and the testing was amazing. My dad got sick, thought he had COVID, had to wait 5 days, went to the VA hospital. It was the wrong, they wouldn't treat him at one place. He had to go to another place. By the time he got a diagnosis, I mean, he would have infected a whole host of other people. Like it's the same, the vaccine and the testing have been poorly administered, and they have been favoring people in high profile positions. And I think it's both both of those things have cost American lives. And it just chews me up too. And I'm sure you understand this. Like, Republicans are still talking about Benghazi, and wanting to hang Hillary Clinton, and Barack Obama and Biden, because he was there, for their lack of response to Benghazi that led to the death of how many people, right? And this is still a rallying cry, and yet there has been so much death that is, and we can't stop a virus, get it, but you always 100% have responsibility, and the ability to choose how you respond to something. And we did not respond well. We argued with each other. We politicized. It, and that costs lives. Like you said, in the order of magnitude now of a 9/11 per day, uh, and it's not even being discussed by half the nation.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Um, while we are going through this pandemic with the other people, we also have another pandemic, which to me is just as bad, and that's an economic pandemic.
Right.
And it seems that we would rather, or at least the administration, would rather give us a $600 band aid rather than a substantial 2,000 stimulus, while some countries are giving away, not giving away, but having to supply the people with $2,000 a month. Uh, I think people lose sight of the fact that this is our money that we're talking about. This isn't some type. I mean, this money belongs to the American taxpayer.
Hmm.
Why is it that we have so many people that would rather give us a band aid than what? I mean, even $2,000 is not enough when you consider how long some of these people have been without money, have been without food, or have had to choose between rent and food.
Hmm.
Uh, what is your reaction as a citizen when you see millionaires deciding that it's better for us to have $600 than $2,000 of our own money?
Yeah.
What do you think about millionaires uh, more or less controlling your pocketbook while they're making millions and not worrying about, as I said, whether or not you have food to eat?
Yeah. I mean, pretty much as a rule, right? Most of our elected officials are wealthy in one way or another, which is kind of what makes it cool when people get elected and don't have that background. Um, but yeah, I mean, part of it is politics, obviously. Part of it, I think, is differences of opinion on how the economy works. But there's a very clear argument. John Maynard Keynes, famous economist, talked a lot about priming the pump, and the fact that the government is the only institution at a time like this where you're in a recession, almost depression. Though I get the stock market is thriving, the stock market is not a one-to-one correlation to the economic health of the nation. In fact, it's becoming more and more divergent from that. It's representing the condition of the wealthy more than anybody else. But nonetheless, there is a clear argument that says you give people money, and it doesn't even really matter how much because they're going to spend it. And when they spend it, it stimulates the economy. So I take that money to the store. I go buy brakes that I haven't had, needed for the last 6 months. The person who owns the brake shop, makes a small profit. The taxes are collected on the sale. They go now and they buy an air conditioner because they've been holding on. I mean, it's the multiplier effect. And there's really no reason at a time like this not to give people money, except for A, you don't understand how the economy works, or B, you're so entrenched in a political battle that you've lost track of who the important people are. And like you said, I don't know how to fix that problem with multimillionaires uh, being in charge of things that are so important to the average citizen, because they just have no concept. They don't even remember what it was like, to have an SDG&E bill with a little pink at the top saying, "This is your second notice. One more of these and you're going to be in the dark." They don't know. They don't even know how that exists. So I I think it's a complicated question with a complicated answer. I think it's crazy not to give money. I also think that I take the view from an economics perspective. I'm not a trickle down person. I'm more of a you give it to the folks who have the least, and the reason you do that is because they're not going to hold on to it. You give a rich person money, they'll put it in the bank. They don't need it. You give a poor person money, they're going to go spend it tomorrow. And when they spend it tomorrow, that's what stimulates the economy. And too much, we've been bailing out companies and big, and sending it overseas and all the rest of it. Money goes to the people, like you've said several times. It's our money.
Uh, uh, One last subject that I want to talk about before I let you go
Yeah.
is what's going to happen tomorrow in Georgia. Even though we have seen that the leader of the Proud Boys has been arrested, we have numerous examples of them telling or trying to educate people on how to smuggle illegal arms into the rally that's supposed to be in Washington on on the 6th. What is your impression of what's happening with this current administration? You have approximately 108 representatives saying that they're going to stick by this illegal election argument. You have now 11 senators, including Ted Cruz, that are also going to be a part of this sham. What is your outlook for what's going to take place within the next uh, be- 16 days? And then I expect to have you back in 20 days to see how your predictions
Prediction, guys.
came about.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great question. I'm really concerned, and I don't say that generally lightly. Um, I have never I've never experienced such a divided such a divided group of people on such an important topic. Uh, and there are people that are ready to, at least they're talking, about taking up arms, and it concerns me greatly. I'm a gun owner. I have prepared. I have additional ammunition, which is crazy. Why would anyone need that in this day and age? But but I'm seriously concerned about it. I think it's crazy. Um, I think it's crazy that Ted Cruz has jumped on this bandwagon. Although I guess nothing Ted Cruz does really should surprise me. But there, I get why the newcomers are trying to pander to the Trump base, especially if they think like it's not going to go anywhere. And this is just like a public display of the fact that I'm a hardcore Trump supporter. Uh, but now when you have more established senators jumping on board, it just gives credibility to something that's been proven uncredible multiple times in multiple contexts. And then you have Trump today or on Saturday on the phone, saying 19 times, "I need 11,000, 700 votes or whatever."
11,780.
Yeah. So I think my biggest hope is that at the end, that regardless of what happens in the next couple of days, that we hold people accountable. If we do find that things were done incorrectly, if there was fraud, if there was even an attempt at fraud, I want prosecution to the full extent of the law, regardless of who it was or why they did it. And I think every American should want that. However, it's been now 2 months, and there's been ample opportunity to show compelling evidence that stands up to scrutiny. It hasn't happened yet that I've seen, and I've looked. I think I'm heartened by the mid and lower level local Republican electoral employees. In almost all cases, they are including the what Attorney General of Georgia was it, that
Yes.
basically repudiated Trump directly and said you have the incorrect facts. I'm really that makes me less concerned. If those people were starting to flip, then I'd be worried. I just think that it's crazy that so many people think such a big thing could have been pulled off, and we wouldn't have any indication of it. It just would have required so much documentation, communication, coordination, and we have yet to see one incriminating email, one incriminating text message from anybody of consequence talking about what they're going to do to try to impact the election, with the exception of the phone call of Donald Trump on Saturday. So it's, there's been no evidence except for the evidence that he's provided us directly in his actions, which really are disturbing. So, man, I'm worried. I don't know, James. I hope things are going to be okay. I hope cool heads prevail.
Well, we'll see, Mike. And once again, I thank you so much for coming on our first show of the year. As always, I can count on you, and I thank you. And as I said, I'll be back in 21 days to see what how things will be coming out, and
Yep.
we'll continue this discussion. So you have a great
Absolutely.
night, and
Happy New Year. Thank you.
same to you. I appreciate you, man. You have a great New Year to you and yours.
Take care, brother. Bye-bye
Thank
now.
you. Well, we've had two guests this evening, and now, as usual, we will turn our show over to the San Diego chapter of the Black Panthers. Mr. Robert Ward Williams will take over. Brother Williams, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing just fine, brother James. Doing just good.
Uh, I see Brother Ross and Brother Lawrence are already in the queue, and I will let you gentlemen start your discussion for this evening.
All right. Basically, what we want to do is jump right in, just talking about people's expectations, Black folks' expectations as far as 2021. I mean, when you look back on the year 2020, it was a very significant year in terms of a wake up call for our people. And what we're working toward and hoping that people take into 2021 is just reassessing their goals and reassessing how they will pursue life, pursue ambition, pursue working toward justice in the United States, as well as one of the biggest pet peeves we have within the Panther Party is just the pursuit of higher knowledge and higher awareness of what's really going on in the world. Because unfortunately, what we find and what we did learn last year is as a result of basically, I would say, a lack of political education or political awareness, us Black people, we see all of the detrimental things that have taken place with Donald Trump. And from that standpoint, it's not over. I mean, he's just being buck wild. So we're looking at unprecedented times, pun intended. And from that standpoint, we want our people to just be a little bit more aware of what they need to be working toward accomplishing, especially as it applies to a captive audience in recognition to our expectations and recognition to what we need to hold ourselves accountable for moving into the year 2021. So, with that being said, um, I invited two of our brothers from the Inland Empire chapter to jump on. Brother Ross is the staff, and Brother Lawrence is the chairman. And so I'm going to turn it over and let them jump in on this.
All
Tell
power, brother. All power.
Black Power, brother. How you doing today? Appreciate being here, brother James.
No problem, brothers. Always glad to help educate our people. And could you, gentlemen, kind of explain what the Inland Empire is? Is that one of the? Is that the way the things are broken up as far as the organization? Is that a different chapter? Exactly how does that work? Brother Williams?
Basically, it is a different chapter. So the San Diego Black Panther Party, it also helped to spring up the Inland um, Panther Party. And so, again, as a result of a lot of the interest and awareness that our people have taken last year, it did help to recruit and raise the awareness of the Black Panther Party and get more people wanting to be involved. And Inland Empire is just one of the cities that we've made headway in establishing a chapter. But I let those brothers go ahead and speak and bring their piece.
Right on, brother. My name is Brother Lawrence Lewis, chairman of the Inland Power chapter of the Black Panther Party. And what I do want to speak about is since we're in 2021, 2020 was a kind of a harsh year for a lot of people. A lot of people lost jobs, families due to COVID. So what we want to do this year is to do better than last year, and just not that, but to also educate our community and also bring up our youth in a way that we wasn't taught. Our objective as Panthers is to empower one of another, also empower the community, also, but also we're family orientated. So we got to take care of our household first. And so my thing is we have a lot of things going on right now, and there's a lot of people out there that need help. And as pastors, these are the times in a recession when we're needed, you know. And I want to pass this to chief of staff because we're going to bounce around. Because I know our time is very limited, so I don't want to take up too much time.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the time, gentlemen.
Okay, brother.
I'll take care of that. But it's more important that we get the information out. So don't worry
Okay.
about time.
Uh,
Okay. Well, hey, my name is Ross Galloway. I'm the chief administrator of the Empire Black Panther Party. Uh, what I would like to get to today is that you know, everybody is so worried about. When I say everybody, I'm talking about the black community. We're so worried about Donald Trump, Biden. We had 45 presidents so far, and nothing has changed in the black community. So what we need to focus on and get together is get ourselves together and build in within ourselves and produce our own politics. Uh, and I say 2020 is a blessing because it's a time where we get to learn one another, uh, learn our family, be with our family, and we see uh, the people that have children, we see how the schools aren't teaching our children anything. So I think this is a time for the blacks to to take it back to the 50s and 60s where we're teaching our kids trades, how to budget their money, uh, how to market, how to invest, and invest into your own people, so we all could build a good foundation in our community so we can prevail and provide generational wealth for ourselves and for our future, and like right now, we're distracted right now with everything that's going on in the world. When I say distractions, I mean by like television, social medias. It's a good tool, but it's also a weapon for us. And what I mean by a weapon is that everybody is somewhat brainwashed. I know some people that sit in their house 13, 14 hours a day just scrolling up and down the phone, you know, looking at people. We see on social media people, women shaking their ass on there. Everybody want to be a rapper. Everybody flaunting money. Pretending they live in these big homes and houses. You know, but what it is that we need to stop fantasizing and get back to reality. Because by us fantasizing, all that's doing is making us weak as a people, brainwashing us, making us fall behind, and thinking this is the only chance that we got to make money and survive is by shaking our ass, being a rapper, playing sports, being an entertainer, a YouTuber. You know, the statistics on that, making that a career is very low, 1 or 2%. So my thing is, I wanted to take it back to the 60s, saying, where we teach trade, saying, where the kids can have something to fall back on, go in business for themselves, so they don't have to worry about getting hired, getting fired, without somebody putting a salary base on them, where they can prevail and provide for themselves, their community, and teach the youth, the same trades that they were taught as a child, just keep it spread it through the Black community. But I could talk all day. I don't want
Uh,
to.
Gentlemen, let me kind of pose a question to you here, and I'm not disagreeing with going back to our basic roots, but in today's society, where uh, goods have become kind of a how can I put this? Uh, where homemade goods and self development have become dependent upon commercial markets. Uh, you don't really have the uh, um, foundation of using self sufficiency, uh, such as we see with the Mennonites and the Amish. Uh, in order for us to move to bring greater economic wealth and economic power to our community, uh, how do we use social media to our advantage, even though it shows these negative images?
Let me, James, let me jump in on this one. And I
Okay.
like the way that you started off talking about self sufficiency, because on our platform, point number one, we say we want freedom, and then we say right behind that we want the power to practice self determination. So self sufficiency starts with practicing self determination. And in practicing self determination, now you get into what we refer to as our 3Ds, which is define, develop, and then defend. So as we, as Black people here in the United States, are going to need to be redefining what is in our best interest. And so going back to what I talked about uh, us being politicized within the year 2020, I want to make sure, and this especially applying to the our younger generations, because what the two brothers are referencing have some more so to do with the younger generations and their inability to be able to grasp the larger picture by not being focused in on historical significance of what is happening. So when he referenced the 1950s and 60s, what he's talking about is he's talking about the aspect of closed communities. Well, now, obviously, mind you, we were dealing with segregation, but what we were dealing with was a situation to where, because we had to do for self, we did do for self. So the mentality is to go back and define what is in our best interest and work towards the reestablishing of a mindset and in a way of life that does not have us wasting time on this cycle of nothingness, the cycle of, like how he's saying, was scrolling through the phone, just caught up in not recognizing the most important asset we have is our limited time on this planet. And so as you talk about and ask it and pose the concept of being self-sufficient, that really goes back to our recognition of, I would say, the importance of a strong academic background coupled with a sense of purpose. So the Black Panther Party, we push to get our people to be aware, have a awareness of knowledge of self. And in addressing awareness of knowledge of self, point number 5 on our platform says we want an education for our people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society. We want an education that teaches us our true history and our role in present day society. That will only come by way of us coming together and working toward actually redefining who we are, what we are, and where we want to take ourselves as a people. And one of the aspects that I address and we address as Panther parties go into the aspect of the dysfunctional family structure. Our family structures, because especially you can even talk about this here in San Diego, especially because of the fact that our numbers in terms of us blacks and minorities, I wouldn't say minorities, but I was just going to say black community per se, is quite small. We have to redefine what we consider to be the family model. Typically, when we think family, we think husband, wife, or partner, and children. But what we're not thinking and not including is our role within the community. What is our relationship to our next door neighbor? What is relationship to the family down the street? What is their relationship to building and actually the circulation of any type of resource within the community to help empower the community? So that aspect of the 50s and 60s that he's talking about just goes back to the mindset set of being aware of the fact that if we are to empower ourselves as a people, which goes back to our slogan, all power to the people, then we must look at the power of unity. And through the power of unity can come the power of establishing co-ops, the power of recognizing how viable our assets can be as a collective push and a collective bargaining tool. Now, mind you, with that being said, this is not an overnight process. I get that, and it's going to take a lot of work, and it takes a lot of movement in that direction. But when you couple that with what we have received in terms of our direction of empowerment, period, as a collective versus individuals being empowered, then we don't really have much of a choice. Because what's happening here, just even across the board, is that the divide between the middle class divide is shrinking as a result of technological advances, which technology typically doubles every 6 months in terms of the capacity, in terms of knowledge, in terms of know-how, in terms of just way communications operate and manufacturing operates all across the board. But what you don't see happening coupling every 6 months is our innovativeness and our ability as a people to be able to match the pace of technological advancement. So what happens to us, going back to what the brothers were addressing in regards to social media, is that we become more and more emotionally unstable and emotionally incapable to keep up with our physical demands and our physical maturity. So you end up with a lot of people that just basically don't know how to actually address the pace of the technology in terms of their ability to harness and utilize it in a proper fashion. So it begins to be abused, and it's abused because the rate in which is the pace is progressing. We're not matching that in terms of how we can utilize it as a resource across the board. So what ends up happening is people put on this virtual face, this virtual image, and this virtual front, and they get lost into the virtual world. And in getting lost in the virtual world, they redefine their real life values and perspectives on what life has to offer based upon what cover ups that they can put and what likes they can get and how many people they can follow and vice versa. So we create this fabricated world which has no real existence in terms of empowering ourselves as a people, and we hide behind it. And hiding behind it is no different than it would be with any other drug or any other thing that's going to cop out of life and cause you to not be able to connect and face challenges and be able to address real life situations as they come. Basically, what happens is you have a whole generation of people who find themselves not being able to be connected with what's real. And so there's a big disconnect with that. And then that disconnect continues to couple with the older generations. and it just keeps spiraling out of control. So we tend to find ourselves in a position where people your age and my age have a hard time being able to connect with the younger generation because they have this instantaneous mentality. And more of our people are getting trapped in that virtual perspective of what the world is. And when you look at that, that's nothing more than just a new form of domestication. And through that new form of domestication, how is it that our people are going to be able to ever reach toward a concept of self-sufficiency when we keep turning over our freedoms and giving them away to this technological advanced giant that is just eating at us from a consumer level? And I'm gonna say this one part, and then I'm gonna basically turn it back over to you to ask a question or whatever. Let the brothers talk. One of the things that we like to talk about here is what we refer to as controlling the dynamic. Knowing that instead of trying to dominate your opponent's every move, work to define the nature of the relationship itself. Control your opponent's mind, pushing emotional buttons and compelling them to make moves with their feelings. This is what we find taking place with our people. And as a result of things like that taking place with our people, more and more of us are becoming victims to the weaponization of technology, victims to the weaponization of the media, victims to the weaponization of the political arena, and our disconnect with what real politics is, which is governing self, becomes more and more of a challenge to even bring across so that our people can recognize this. This is why the Panther Party refers to everything as political education and everything is politics, because it's about the governing of self. And so, from that standpoint, the academic uh, imbalances that are placed upon us through, especially through the public school system, causes us to not be able to recognize the importance of an education to the point to where we don't allow ourselves to be crystallized into only equating knowledge with currency, and therefore we're turned off on knowledge of self. We're turned off on being a better person in society and defining who we are. Because if we can't tie that directly to a career path or a way to make a dollar, then it doesn't make sense to us. And so that dynamic has to change as a community. And that leads back to the dysfunctionality of the family that I referred to. Go ahead, Brother James.
Uh, Brother Ross, I've referred this as the weaponization of hope. You keep telling people, you keep telling people that they're hope when in actuality, their odds of success are little to none. What do you think about this concept of advancement through social media, or is it time, or is there a limit to how much we can advance ourselves through social media?
Well, see, social media, like I said, it has its pros and it has its cons. The pros, like this year for myself, what I'm doing on my social media, I'm promoting nothing but black. If you're a black and you starting a business, if you started anything that's gonna contribute to your family and the community, I'm advertising it. And like I said, this is a copycat world. So if you have more black people producing and advertising more pro-black, do this and do that, everybody's gonna catch on. This is a copycat world. And then two, these like I say, the cons in social media is just like I have a friend. He's 52 years old, and he's a rapper. And I told him, I said, dude, we need to get back into reality. You lived half your life is over with. You're 52 years old and you're trying to be a rapper. What's the odds of you being a 52-year-old up and coming artist? You know, and he got upset at me. He got upset because I told him. He got upset because I told him the truth. We got to apply ourselves and be more productive with our own natural talents. Rapping is that's just a hobby. He was a great barber. I said, you should have kept barbering. You could have had your own barber shop. You could have franchised that. Your franchise, you could spread it on to your children, to your family, and and made something happen. So, but the reason why he's caught up into still being a rapper, because he's always on social media. He's not being productive. He's not out there job searching. He's not trying to learn a trade, learn a skill. He's still he's caught into the social media. He sees everybody rapping, everybody throwing money, and that's what he wants. When I try to educate him, he gets upset. So that's the pros and cons in social media to me.
And let
Uh,
me add to this real quick, James. Let me just add a quick point. The fact that we're talking about somebody that is 52 years old that is influenced by a younger model of quote unquote success shows you that we're talking about the power and the influence that social media has, to where basically it shows that our value system is warped. And having a warped value system again goes right back to, how do you draw your perspective on life? So we get our people are getting caught up in the misplacement of what values are, as well as what it is that should be defining who I am. So when we're talking about an emotionally unstable population, and we're talking about an emotionally immature people as a result of not dealing with the pace of technology and the pace in the use of this technology and the application. Because remember, when we talk about warfare, it's not so much that something is in existence that makes it powerful, it is the application of it. So, dealing with social media from the standpoint of the application of it being weaponized against the mind and against our ability to mature to a sense of developing who and what we are, goes and creates a disservice to a certain degree. So this kind of even ties right back into the concept of rites of passage. Here as African Americans, most of us don't go through any formalized rites of passage. So all we typically do is emulate what we see our parents do, and that becomes our rites of passage. But now, if you're growing up in a home to where there is certain levels of instability and emotional instability within your parents, then you emulate that same set of values, and then you couple that with the high speed pace of communication that is taking place now. And so people become further and further behind in terms of where they should be, especially when they have not emphasized and established a sense of pride on who they are through their own self identity and their own cultural values and their own placement of judgment as it applies to being able to be a contributor to life. So then you create this fabrication. And that is exactly what social media ends up becoming at that point. Now go ahead, Brother James.
uh, Brother Lawrence, as you seem to be the youngest member of this little conversation that we're having here, and I'm wondering, when you look back upon the history, not just of the Panther Party itself, but of our people. Uh, what encourages you as a young man that you can make a change when it seems that we have been stuck in a sense of stagnation almost since the 80s?
Okay. Well, in that note, what we as the people need to realize that nothing is going to change unless we as the people change first. And nothing needs to change but our mindset, our thought process, the way we project things, the way we receive things. You know, first things first, what I what I believe, in order to bring in order to bring that perspective back, what we need to do is that we need to come together as a whole. Because as black people, we've been segregated, we've been separated for a while, and now we're coming back together because of recession, or due COVID, or whatever it may be, you know. But why did it have to take into this for us to come together? We should already be united as one, you know. And what we have to do is to renew our mind, renew our mind and to unlearn and relearn. Because a lot of things that we was taught, or better yet, you could say, passed down from generation to generation, misled of information. We was led in the wrong direction as people. So what had happened that we grew up with this poverty mindset, this poor me mentality. And in order to come back from that, we have to find ourselves first. We have to find ourselves and empower ourselves.
Brother Ross,
So
anything you'd like to add to that?
Uh, yeah. What I think what we have to do as a people is that we have to, and first of all, the black community to grow is that we have to love one another. That's it. That's the only way we gonna get together. We have to love one another. You know, we have to use all our resources, all the resources in the community, just like how the Hispanics do in California. They use their resources. You know what I'm saying? That's how they take over neighborhoods. We need to do the same thing. We might have a plumber on one street, a barber down the way, electrician 2 houses down. We have to build. We have to build. We have to come together and build, get our resources together, and quit depending on these politics, on Donald Trump, and quit depending on these stimulus. We have to depend on ourselves. You know, we need to get stronger as people, mentally, spiritually, and we need to read and get educated more. You know, and just like I said, 2020, my social media, I'm taking to a whole nother level. I'm advertising black. I'm pro black. I'm not a racist, but we have to represent each other. You know, to build. And once we show that love, the love is going to spread. Oh, he looked out for me. Oh, I'm gonna look out for him, and then it's going to be a trickle effect. You know, but that's it.
Uh, Brother William, Brother Robert, I've been listening to what everyone has said, but when you walk along the black community, maybe in this block, there's still a store left. The rest of the block has been bulldozed. You look upon you look at most of our neighborhoods. Uh, 50 to 70% of the housing is either dilapidated, torn down, or uh, uninhabitable. So when we talk about enabling our own communities, how do we do that when most of the businesses in our community have either left or failed? We get very little, if any, help from uh, our federal resources to rebuild our schools. In fact, in a lot of communities, we have less schools now than we had a generation ago. You talk about police reform, and people automatically think that you're talking about taking police away from the community. We, in a lot of instances, the Panthers themselves have proven that we can police our own community. We can address a lot of the problems in our community. But if our communities are substandard, how do we influence these businesses and people of color to come back into a safe zone?
Well, I would say, first and foremost, I want to give a plug onto a book that I would say is a good start in terms of just addressing this from an overall perspective that our people need to know about. Author by the name of Dr. Claude Anderson wrote a book called Powernomics, and in that book, he addresses the aspect of us dealing with a community approach to creating empowerment, through economics, and he provides steps in terms of how to go about doing that. And one of the examples I would like to even use, as that's close to what Brother Ross and Lawrence is from the younger generation. It's not really younger generation; he's kind of close to my age. Would be what Nipsey Hussle was doing, and from that standpoint, the idea is that he was empowering his area, his community. He was showing the people how, look, it's not always about having an advanced education, but what it is about, it's about us working together, building together, growing together, trading together, and bartering together, which, even goes back into the same concept to where what we have to do is recognize the power of circulation of resources within our own dynamic. And as we practice that, again, you know, it does take sacrifice. That's one of the things I want to say from that standpoint, because unfortunately, a lot of people are not hip to the fact that living a meaningful life requires sacrifice. There is no escaping sacrifice, no matter what path of life you take. Unfortunately, because most people are not self-aware enough to the degree of seeing that sacrifice is a day-to-day thing, they typically end up sacrificing their well-being for what they consider to be the some sense of stability, just through even operating under a minimum wage lifestyle. The security of having a job versus the insecurity, or the challenge or the fear of accomplishing something, causes so many people to be stifled. That leads right back to another book I would say I like people to check out, The 50th Law, written by Robert Greene and 50 Cents. They go on in that book and talk about how fear captivates so many people to the point to where they don't even try at something that's challenging, simply because they fear failure. The fear of failure does so much to neutralize, and I say that from the standpoint of understanding warfare, neutralize the black mind to the point to where we get caught up in that cycle of victimization that Brother Lawrence talked about, to the degree that we never come up out of it. So what happens is, if you couple that over time, obviously what we look at is we look at a dilapidated community model that we live in within the black community. And so from that standpoint, foreign bloodsuckers, so to speak, or just any interest will come in, and they basically take and utilize our consumption, um, thirst. I would call it that, our consumption thirst, which goes back to being coupled with a lack of self value. They take that this consumption thirst and they use it as a weapon against us as a people. And so therefore, we buy at their stores, we deal with their higher prices, and you even see it at the gas stations. If you go to the typical black neighborhood, or even the minority neighborhood, you'll see that the gas prices typically are even higher than they are in the white neighborhoods. You can go to an affluent white neighborhood with larger scale housing, with higher tax value, and you will see gas prices cheaper. So what is that actually telling you? So why would gas be cheaper in a better off neighborhood, and more expensive in an impoverished neighborhood? See, this goes right back to the concept of liquor stores, and even, I hate to say, oftentimes the churches on the corners. We have to change the dynamic and the approach in terms of how we come together as a people. As we do that, we start redefining what our community is. This isn't something that can happen overnight. But what I'm hoping we learned from 2020 is that this is a direction that we need to take serious. We have to take serious the fact that we have played the victimization role for so long. And I'm not going to even sit here and completely place the blame on the European mentality, because at this point in the game, we owe it to ourselves to pull ourselves up. And see, that's the aspect of the Black Panther Party that a lot of people don't recognize. What we're saying, what we're not doing is we're not preaching hate. Unfortunately, that is what tends to rule the media because we don't control it. What we preach is the love for our people. The love for our people means that we need to do for self. The love for our people means that we need to work toward higher levels of accountability within the Black community. We need to tackle Black on Black crime. We need to deal with our levels of awareness of what we need to become. This is again why we start off and we go into define, develop, and defend what is in the best interest of our people. So, going back to the concept of sacrifice, it is not easy to make a change. But that same change that a person is willing to make when they stop smoking cigarettes, same change a person's willing to do when they go out and exercise every other day, these things that change your makeup on a physical level, why not apply that same thing to your mental development and your spiritual development and your psychological development? Yes, it is a sacrifice. Yes, it is hard. But look at the alternative. What is the quality of living? See, we're familiar with the concept of the quality of living as it applies to physical injuries or physical pains or medication that people end up having to take as a result of not paying attention in the younger years. But that same quality of life applies to your mental capacity and your spiritual capacity, your psychological capacity. This is why I say what we end up with is a whole lot of immature old folk. And I'm not even saying, when I say old folk, I'm not talking about senior citizens. I'm just talking about cats in their 30s and 40s and on. The deal is they could not keep up with the pace of their physical bodies. Their mental bodies and their spiritual body could not keep up with the pace. And they're still, they're still in grade school. And from that standpoint, we have to take this knowledge and go back to re-educating our people and getting us to just look in the mirror and work on it. So to me, what I do want to leave the listening audience with is sacrifice is a good thing. The fact that we escape, and again, one of the downfalls of social media has to do with getting, asking Siri or whatever you want to call it, um, these virtual machines that can give you instant answers. We apply that to our life, and applying instantaneous results to your life mean that you haven't you haven't earned anything. And so when you don't earn things, when you don't actually go through trials and tribulations to get things, then oftentimes we take it for granted. So we're taking the technological advances for granted. And as a result of us taking lifestyles for granted, and these lifestyles again are doubling every 6 months or so, we continue to fall behind the curve. And so one of the best approaches that we want to use, and as we talk about here tonight, has to do with the educational level of our people and the maturity level of our people. So the Black Panther Party here, whether we talk in San Diego, Inland Empire, our goal is to help bridge that lack of self development, within our people. So it's about seizing the time and using that spark as much as possible. That's all I got to say, Brother James.
Well, uh, Brother Robert, can we get final thoughts from the two young men from the Inland Empire?
Go ahead, brothers.
Brother
Okay.
Lawrence?
Well, what I want to leave the people with today is that we need to learn to prioritize our lives. And what I mean by prioritize, I need to put what is important first. Because me, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a man. At the end of the day, If I don't do what I need to do for my family, what am I leaving behind for them? What am I leaving behind for the next generation? What am I doing proactive in my life that I could pass down to the next generation, pass down to my family? So, to those that's listening right now, I just want to empower you and just tell you to prioritize your life because that's very important because you're just not going to suffer. Your kids is going to suffer. Your spouse is going to suffer. Your family is going to suffer. So at the end of the day, what we need to do is that we got to come with a game plan. And that's why, I became a pastor. I became a pastor because I seen a need in my community. I seen a need in my people. So when I became a pastor, I my job, I want to educate the youth, the younger generation, because, as the older generation get older, they got to pass the torch down to the younger generation. And I don't want the younger generation to go like me, even though, I'm not as old, but I am getting there. I got some gray hairs here and there, but it's all good. My job is to empower the people, to motivate the people, to get the people up and running. It's 2021. We're here to see another year. We're here to see another day. So let's make the best of our lives for the rest of our lives. So I want to leave that to the people. I want to all power to the people, black power to the black people. And, let's come together in unity. Let's work together. Let's motivate each other. Let's support each other. And also, let's do it for the youth. If you're not going to do it for yourself, do it for the youth because they need it right now.
Thank you for your time, Brother Lawrence. Inspiring words. Brother Ross.
Yes, sir. Well, I want to end it like this. To all my people, we just need to stop living in fantasy and get back to reality. You know, let's get when I say reality, I mean let's get back to what our grandmothers and grandfathers taught us. You know, let's have morals, let's have respect, let's be orientated, family, community orientated. Let's educate the children on not how to live, but let's teach them how to produce. You know what I'm saying? So it could pass generation to generation. And we just had to support one another. You know, we like we got to advertise everybody's businesses. Encourage our people. You know, we got to give people hope. You know, especially as a Black Panther. We got to give people hope, like give them love, and give them what they need. We're not gonna give it to you. We're gonna teach you the game so you can learn the game, you can pass the game on to your families and to generation after generation. But other than that, I think as blacks, we've came a long way, a long way. Just on looking on how many successful blacks we have nowadays, how many black entrepreneurs, how many black college graduates we have from slavery, from us being stripped from who we are. I think we came a long way, and that's what I'm saying. That's why I think that's their number one fear, because it's like, we whoop these guys. We stripped them, and look at them. They're some of the most successfulest people in this world. But what it's going to have to take is for everybody to wake up, to these entertainers, to the poor man. We gotta build our own system. If we like sports, have our own sports system. Our music, our own music. We have to build our own system because they're making money off of us. We need to make money off ourselves and spread it to our family and to our community. But that's all I gotta say. That should be the goal for 2021. Everybody spread the love, everybody advertise black business, support black, and just be black. And it'll all come together.
Brother Williams, uh, I want to, before I get your final thoughts, I want to kind of address a couple things that are very disturbing to me, and that's is the Black Lives Matter movement. One thing that we've seen, especially within the last couple months, is that as we get more support, we become more fractured. Once again, I see the crab mentality poking its ugly head. As soon as you see one brother or one organization making some inroads, the first thing you try to do is to pull it back down to the bottom of the barrel. Um, in 2021, can you tell me what is the most important thing that we can do as Black people to get rid of this crab mentality?
To me, again, I think it kind of just goes back to, because when you say crowd mentality, what that is the upliftment of the individual. By dealing with the upliftment of the individual, then that ties hand in hand with running what we call the race. And if you're running the race, then it's every man for himself. So deploying a society with the mentality of thinking every man for himself is basically conquer and divide. And in conquer and divide, what we're basically talking about is we're talking about the opposite of what we need to be doing as a people. And see, so this goes back to the concept of knowing your enemy. And you have to, in dealing with knowing your enemy, the target of your strategies is not the army, but the mind who runs it. So in addressing that, we as a people have to move away from a dysfunctional family model that employs the concept of every man for himself or every household for themselves, because that does not generate what we call community wealth and community empowerment. See, the Black Panther Party is about getting our people to empower themselves. The individual can be empowered because that's the whole nature of capitalism in the way it's designed. But that empowerment of the individual is how you end up with an elite class, and the mass majority of the people are left on that hamster wheel chasing that carrot, and just looking at a lottery ticket as a means of, well, it's always possible. You never know. There's nothing saying that it can't happen to me. And it's no different than how you would have a whole city of children inspiring to be on the in the NFL or the NBA, where basically when you break that down, you're talking about, and excuse me for not knowing the team layout, but I would just simply say you're talking about 25 people or so on a team that whose job span lasts for the average of 4 to 5 years. So when you have a whole population of millions of people looking for a lottery ticket like that, that is a people that are lost in terms of being self-defined. That is a people that are lost in terms of placement of values. So I would say we have to go back to what we refer to as the 3Ds. Define what is in the best interest for us as a people, not the African individual, but the Black family, the Black structure as it applies to a community based operation. So to me, everything is about the community. We have to think community. We have to think Black community. We have to think empowering ourselves from that position, because otherwise what you're dealing with is you're dealing with conquer and divide strategy. And conquer and divide strategy is an old technique that just will always work. That is like as old as what people refer to as the first stream of professional of career profession, which is prostitution. So we have to get away from that. We have to raise ourselves up. So to me, the shock value of what we encountered in 2020, I am hoping that it will cause us to raise the bar and be willing to do that one term that I want to refer back to, and that's have sacrifice. So as a takeaway, and to answer your question, sacrifice. Go ahead, Brother James.
Well, I would like to thank you for participating in our first show of 2021. And I look forward to our continuous education of the people. And I thank you so much for your time, you, Brother Ross and Brother Lawrence. And I look forward to talking to you again next week, Brother Robert.
All right. All power to the people.
All power to the people.
Thank you, gentlemen. And thank you to our
All
listeners
power to the people.
tonight.
Thank you, sir.
I hope we have helped to educate our audience and given you something valuable to think about, not only over the next coming weeks, but over the next coming period of our lives, and think about how we can make a change for the positive within our own community, as well as our families and our lives. Thank you so much for listening to the Political Consciousness of West Coast Steeler Fan, and I look forward to talking to you again next Monday night. Have a great week, folks.
All power.
Black power.
Black power.